Today I want to talk a little bit about palettes, and that's something that you can decide how you want to work. I'll show you the ones that I'm not particularly fond of first, because I just think that there are others that satisfy my needs a little bit better. But there are these horizontal open palettes like this, and you can see I have used this one in the past quite a bit. I haven't cleaned it because I really like that green, and I think I'm going to use that green again. And most dried pigments can be reconstituted, you know, as you need them. This particular palette has some nice big mixing areas, and they're divided up enough so that you can mix several colors at the same time. This also has this little finger hold where you would place your thumb, so if you actually wanted to paint on an easel, this might work very well for that purpose. But I think for botanical illustration, this kind of a setup is not really necessary because you're working on such small areas and for such a long period of time. This palette here is a leak-proof palette. However, if you carry it to class, like so, it's going to leak all over. It's meant to not leak out of the case, but if you have any wet pigments in any of these areas, you're going to have all of these colors will end up being polluted one way or the other. However, if you like this setup, what you probably should do is put all your yellows together, your reds together, your blues together, as I have done here. You can even, you know, put blues next to greens or greens next to the yellows, depending on how you like to work with them. You can also make a chart for yourself. I've written the names of the pigments that I have in here right on the tray itself. But really, it's better if you create a library here similar to what we're doing, only in a little different fashion, so that you know what these colors look like when they're diluted, and then label them, and definitely label who the manufacturer is as well as the color of the pigment. For travel, I really like this little kit. This is a Winsor Newton kit, and it works very nicely. I actually bought this when I had Cotman watercolors in here. I understand that there is now a professional one, which is probably over $100 at this point. But what I did was I took all of the Cotman pigments out and purchased half trays of dried watercolor in the shades that we use here in this class. So I have Scarlet Lake, Permanent Rose, Cadmium Yellow Light, Lemon Yellow, and so forth, so that I have the colors that I need that coordinate with what I would use at home. This little jar here holds water, and you can set this up. This is your water tray, so when you are out in the field and doing some little sketch work, you have a couple of mixing areas even on the water tray itself. And this did come with a little brush, but I prefer to have my regular full-size brushes with me when I'm working. So this is kind of a nice little kit to have when you're traveling and you know, you don't want to take all of your art supplies with you. So this is a nice little kit to have for traveling, and as I say, you know, you can stick it in your carry-on, however you want to work. At home, I rather like this palette. I bought this at Michael's. The reason that I like this palette is because I can put all of my colors in here that I have, including additionals. So I basically have my Scarlet Lake, my Permanent Rose, my Ultramarine Blue, my Prussian Blue, I have Sap Green, I have Lemon Yellow, and Cadmium Yellow Pale. I then also have some Quinacridone Yellow, and I have some Quinacridone Orange, and a few other colors that I happen to like to work with. But this kind of represents the color wheel. So I know that if I have Scarlet Lake and I need to have the complement to tone this down, and we'll talk about that when we do the color wheel, I know I just can go right opposite to find the complement that I need in order to get the correct mix. So this one I like very much. If you want something a little more consolidated, you can buy one of these little plastic trays. This comes with a lid so that you can place that on top and keep the dust out of it. This again, I've pretty much set up like the color wheel with my reds, 2 reds together, my 2 yellows, my 2 blues. I have Windsor Violet, so that went between the blues. And I'm pretty much set up as though it were a color wheel for mixing my colors. This is very handy. The pigments do dry out in this, as they will on any palette that you purchase. But with watercolors, we have the good fortune of being able to reconstitute just by adding water and letting it sit for a little while. I usually have 2 or 3 of these so that this becomes my library of colors. And as you can see, I've cheated a little by mixing in here. But usually I will have an additional half a dozen of these. Usually they don't get clean because I kind of like saving the colors. But you can do your mixing in this, and then you can use this as this becomes your library, and you try to keep this one as clean as possible. It's really easy to clean. Take your mixing brush, and you can just wipe it out, dry the brush, or if you have to wet it a little, you know, and then your library color is clean. So that's the story on palettes. You can decide which way you want to work. So that's a story on palettes.